So, having looked at our circle terminology, naming parts of the circle, now we'll have a look at using the formulas for calculating circumference and calculating area. And the first thing you'll notice is that in both of those, we've got this symbol here. And that symbol stands for the number pi. And you'll see that we've got 3.14, blah, 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 lots and lots of digits. And those digits after the decimal point keep going and going and going. This is an irrational number. Okay, but it's about 3.14 to 2 decimal places. Okay, and you need to know where that number is on your calculator. So if we have a quick look, if you've got one of these, then if we press the shift button and we press the button down the bottom here, the times 10 to the power of button, okay, we've got pi on there. If we press if we press standard to decimal, we get our display in full for pi. Okay, so if you're interested in what that number means, or where it comes from, you'll find that if you take the circumference of a circle and you divide it by the diameter of the circle, you'll always get that number pi. It doesn't matter how big or small the circle is. All right, but as long as you can use that number and know where it is on your calculator, we should be good to go. Okay, so let's have a look at our first formula. Our first formula is for circumference. And the circumference of the circle is that distance around the edge. So how are we going to work it out? Okay, we've got two formulas there. We've got c equals pi d, and we've got c equals 2 pi r. So the first one of those says that the circumference, which is c, is equal to pi, which we just talked about, times d, where d is the diameter. So c is pi d, c equals pi d. And the diameter is not marked on my circle, but I hope you can see, having watched the last tutorial, that if our radius is 8 centimeters here, our diameter has to be 16 centimeters. So we've got a diameter of 16 centimeters. So it should be nice and straightforward to use that c equals pi d to calculate our circumference. So we're going to say that the circumference is equal to pi, which we know is about 3.14, times the diameter, and that's 16 centimeters. So if we bring our calculator up, we've got the circumference is pi. It doesn't matter whether we do pi times 16 or 16 times pi. We've got pi times 16. Whoops, pi times 16. So your calculator is helpfully going to tell you that's 16 pi. Now in some questions, we might leave it like that. We might want to be working with pi, but if we want to know what it is, we'll go standard to decimal, and we get 50.3 to 1 decimal place. So we've got equals 50.3 centimeters to 1 decimal place. Okay, so if we have a look at the next formula along, we've got another formula for circumference. And that formula says c, still the circumference, equals 2 times pi times r, 2 pi r. Well, this time r is the radius. So let's get rid of that diameter for a minute. Right, we know the radius. The radius is 8. It's already labelled on our diagram. Okay, now you're probably way ahead of me. You can see what's going to happen. If we now calculate c, the circumference, using our new formula, we're going to get that c is equal to 2 times pi times the radius of 8. Okay, so if we do 2 times pi times, oops, try again, 2 times pi times 8, should be no surprise that we're going to get 16 pi. We're going to get the same answer. We'll get 50.3 to 1 decimal place. So we get 50.3 again. Okay, now we can see why that is in the formula, because here we've got pi times 2 times the radius. Here we've got pi times the diameter, and we know that the diameter is just 2 times the radius. So these formulae are really saying the same thing. We can either use circumference equals pi d or circumference equals 2 pi r, because the diameter is just 2 times the radius. Now let's have a look at our area formula. So remember, the area means the area enclosed by that circle. So this time we're going to use our formula that says A equals pi r squared. So the area is equal to our number pi again, but this time times the radius squared, or times the radius times the radius. Okay, so times r, or obviously r squared. So area equals pi times r squared. So let's do that for this circle here. That means we're going to get pi times 8 squared, or 64. So our area will be pi times 64. And our calculator is probably going to tell us 64 pi, which again sometimes might be what we want. Let's go for pi times 64. Ooh, 2 times. Pi times 64. Right, let's S to Z it. We get to one decimal place, 201.1. So 201.1. 201.1. Now this time we've got an area, so we need square centimetres. So 201.1 square centimetres to one decimal place. So all that remains is, how are you going to learn these formulae? How are you going to actually remember them? So we've got 2 for the circumference, we've got c equals pi d, we've got c equals 2 pi r, and we've got a equals pi r squared for the area. So there are a couple of things you could do. You might notice that if we take the c equals 2 pi r, we've got 2 pi r, and in the area formula we've got pi r squared. So it's a little bit like going from circumference to area. You've taken that 2 and you've shifted it over there as a power. So that 2's shifted over there to become the 2 here. And it makes sense that the area's got to be the squared one, because area is going to give us squared units. Okay, so that might be enough for you, just looking at that little 2 in each one and thinking about where it is. But you might need a bit more than that. So if we get rid of those, you might prefer to think, well, if I look at this formula, some people have a mnemonic to remember these, and they talk about the fact that cherry pies delicious. Actually, let's put that with a lowercase p. Cherry pies delicious. So cherry pies are delicious. Cherry pie is delicious. And apple pies are too. Okay, so how does that help us? Well, we've got cherry, cell C. We've got pie, that's our pie. And we've got a D for delicious. So that mnemonic might help you remember cherry pie is delicious, C equals pi D. Bottom one, we've got apple pies are too. So it's a bit dodgy, but we've got apple for area, A for area. We've got pie again, and we've got R2, and it's a squared, isn't it? It's not really a 2, but it might help you. It might help you remember. So apple pies are 2 is going to translate into apple pies are 2. The 2 becomes the squared. Okay, so those mnemonics might help you. If they do, fantastic. If you're one of those lucky people that can just memorize these anyway, doesn't matter whether you remember the c equals pi d or the c equals 2 pi r, as long as you understand they're really the same thing. Okay, the diameter is literally just 2 times the radius. Now it's test yourself time. The formulas have gone. Can you remember what you need in order to calculate the circumference and the area of the blue circle with a diameter of 10.4, and the circumference and the area of the red circle with a radius of 3.8? I suggest you have a go, pause the video, and then check my answers in a minute. Well, you can see I've put my answers for the circumferences up. I got 32.7 centimetres and 23.9 centimetres to one decimal place. Let's have a go at the areas. We'll try the blue circle first. So I'm thinking I need to know area equals pi r squared. So let's put those numbers in. Right, we need pi times the radius squared, but this time I only know the diameter. So I'm thinking to get the radius, I need 10.4 divided by 2. So I get 5.2. So my radius is 5.2. And it's that I need in my area formula. Okay, so I want to do pi times 5.2 squared. So let's do pi, shift, pi times 5.2 squared. So I need 5.2 squared. So as to do it. Right, to one decimal place, I get 84.9. So 84.9. And this time it's square centimetres because we've got an area. Okay, let's try circle 2. Okay, so we got a circumference of 23.9. Let's do our area. And again, we need area equals. It's already on the left. Pi r squared. And this time I know the radius straight away, so I can type straight in pi times my radius squared, 3.8 squared. And I make that 45.4 to one decimal place. So 45.4 square centimetres. Okay. If you got all of those right, well done. Next time we'll look at making things a bit trickier by the same formula and sectors of circles.